Claire Wilcox, welcome to Show Studio.
Thank you so much.
Now you are very, very busy at the moment because you're curating the Savage Beauty exhibition at the Victoria and Albert Museum. Tell me, it must be the most wonderful experience to be putting on that exhibition in London, which is where Lee McQueen was from.
Words fail me. I mean, it's such a remarkable privilege, and I think that on so many levels, it feels so right that this show should be happening in London at this time. And what's been really incredible is to be working with Sam Gainsbury, Joseph Bennett, Katie England, all the people that knew him and care hugely about getting it right, and we care hugely too. So I think it's a completely collaborative team effort.
Absolutely. It's interesting, isn't it, as well, because I'm sure people are aware the exhibition was previously on at the Metropolitan Museum in 2011, and there it was curated by Andrew Bolton. So tell me, just from a sort of curatorial point of view, how does that work? Are you building on his curation? Are you changing certain aspects?
No, we're absolutely building on his brilliant curation, and he's consultant curator on the V&A restaging of Savage Beauty.
Absolutely.
But when I went to see the exhibition at the Met in 2011, I spent 2 whole days there, and Andrew showed me around. I just thought this is the best fashion show. In fact, it's the best show I'd ever seen, and I was completely entranced.
Were you aware at that stage that there was a chance you'd get to do it at the V&A? No, absolutely not.
No, not at all. I went as a fan of McQueen and a fan of museums and a fan of fashion exhibitions, and when I came back, it sort of never left me really. And then when the opportunity came up for us to restage it, I was just felt so right and so happy. And it's quite unusual for the V&A to take touring shows.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, it's a dream come true, to be absolutely honest.
I can imagine. And there are bits that you are tweaking. But particularly I've heard that the London section is going to be. Tell me a bit about what's going to be new if people are going to both. What they should expect.
Well, we were lucky to have 3 galleries available, and that makes it the biggest fashion show the V&A's ever done. And so it gave us the opportunity to enhance some of the sections. So, for example, at the heart of the exhibition is Cabinet of Curiosities, and we happen to have an 8.5 metre high gallery space. So we thought, what if we just extend it, make it go up and up and up? So you go in and it's all around you, but it's above you as well.
Amazing.
And so it was about taking advantage of a little bit more time, some more pieces that we could include that for various reasons hadn't been able to make it to the Met show, and it, in a way, amplifying Andrew's vision.
Sure.
So that's the kind of thing we've been doing, and yes, certainly what we've done with the London Gallery, it acts as a kind of prelude to the rest of the exhibition, and it seemed important to say something about London and about McQueen's roots and about his training on Savile Row, his experience of being a student at St Martin's doing the MA course, and to look at early film footage when he didn't have a backer, he wasn't making pieces for production, they were just pouring from the heart. And this is where Katie England's got involved, and it's been absolutely incredible listening to her talk about those very early shows.
Yeah, and I guess the purity of that time before, as you say, thinking about things like production and sales, it's such a special time. Because you knew him at that time, didn't you, in a way, because you worked with him. Maybe not quite then, because you worked with him on Radical Fashion. When did you first come to meet him?
Oh, it was in 1999 when we started Fashion in Motion at the museum. And as you know, Fashion in Motion is live fashion through the galleries with the V&A. And the first one we ever did was with Philip Tracy, and then Philip introduced me to Lee. And so we did one with him. It was incredible because it was number 13, which was inspired by the arts and crafts movement. Yeah. And what better place to stage something like that than the V&A.
Absolutely.
But he understood it immediately. I was halfway through explaining and he'd got it, he was so quick. So we worked with him on that and it was marvellous. And then we did another one in 2001 with Sean Lean. And by then, Lee was famous and we were absolutely deluged. We had thousands of people crowding the corridors.
Amazing.
And seeing these extraordinary creations, the metal corset, the mouth jewellery, the prosthetic garments, it was very, very special.
It's interesting that you talk of those thousands of people, because obviously that was a similar experience when it was on at the Met, and already at the V&A, you know, the ticket sales, the advance ticket sales have been extraordinary, but the Met sales were incredible. You know, people literally queued through the night.
Yes.
Why is there that response to his work, do you think? I know that's a very hard question.
Well, apparently the exhibition at the Met started off fairly quietly, but it simply was word of mouth. I think people would went to the show, were absolutely knocked out about it, told people, and then it was just an accumulative effect. Basically, it went viral, and the more people that saw it, the more people wanted to see it.
How special that people talked about it.
How special.
It is amazing, isn't it? And why do you think people do respond to his work in such a kind of emotional way?
Well, I think it certainly appeals to people who are not just interested in fashion, but interested in the wider arts, because his references were so diverse. I mean, there's so many things that he was drawing in, the contemporary art scene. I mean, he was very friendly with the Chapman brothers, for example. Film. We've got a wonderful essay in the accompanying publication,
which is incredible, by the way.
And some of the essays which delve into the actual, they have a forensic approach to his work. And for example, there's a chapter by Alistair O'Neill on the film, and that's wonderful. One by Caroline Evans on the torso and the model, and another on the Gothic by Catherine Spooner. And we have just so many good perspectives on his work.
So I guess people can look at his work and see, as you say, all those different, whether or not they're interested in fashion, they can look at it and find something about culture or about history or about, you know, there's an accessibility to his work, even though it's so brilliant, which I find really interesting.
You're right, it's a rarefied kind of work, and of course the original catwalk shows had a very limited audience, and you know, they were one-offs. And this is interesting. People who work backstage never saw it from the front.
Yeah,
so.
That's what Joseph Bennett was saying, Katie England. It's quite amazing.
Yes. I saw a few. I was lucky enough to see a few, and I think the one that stood out for me and was the one that we staged in a minor way in Radical Fashion, which was an exhibition in 2001, was Voss, Spring-Summer 2001, and what a remarkable show.
Yeah.
And we're recreating the glass box in Savage Beauty.
Can we talk about Radical Fashion? Because I think there's two reasons I want to talk about it. One is to discuss your relationship with McQueen and how he'd previously kind of worked with you. But also I think what Savage Beauty is so exciting about is how it has, I think, changed how people see the fashion exhibition. And I'd hate to put the fashion exhibition on the map, because there have always been amazing fashion exhibitions. But it's kind of, I think, maybe put a new spotlight on it. But Radical Fashion, I think, kicked off the modern fashion exhibition in some ways, because it was so daring and so exciting and so contemporary, and that was your baby. So tell me a bit about why you wanted to do it, because it's the best exhibition ever. I think it's incredible.
Thank you. It really began. I'd done an exhibition called Satellites of Fashion for the Crafts Council in '99, and then I moved to the V&A and started Fashion in Motion, and I just became aware of a groundswell of the most extraordinary. I mean, I think it was in art, it was in music, it was in London, and it was in fashion, and I just became completely intrigued by the visual properties of fashion. So for me, seeing Nick's 1997 image of Devon, which was in the Visionaire Comme des Garçons collaboration, seeing that image of this beautiful young face with the pink brocade dress from McQueen's La Poupée collection, and the contact lenses and the safety pin through her forehead. You know, I was thinking, there's something very strange and beautiful happening here. Yeah. And how can we reflect this in the museum? So I decided to do this exhibition called Radical Fashion, and I thought, who are the designers who are the sort of the last tube stop on the Circle Line, or actually it wouldn't have a last stop, would it, because it goes round and round, but who are the at the extremities? Sure. And so I invited 11 different designers. It was Comme des Garçons, Alaya, Essential Iron, and so on. And really, what was interesting was that each designer had their tableau within the exhibition. So you went from a series of installations, really, from one to the other, and every single designer, when they heard who else was in it, completely signed up and got it. And because somebody said to me, is that going to be difficult handling 11 different designers? But it wasn't at all. In fact, it got better and better. And there was such synergy between what was happening.
Yeah.
And there was Helmut Lang and Simiaki, Gautier, and of course McQueen.
And was he was, from what you told me before, he was quite an amazing person to work with, as, even just, you told me an amazing story about when you were installing a piece and a security guard said, can you tell me that again, because it was my favourite story.
Yes, it was for the first Fashion in Motion, and we were installing the wooden skirt in the main entrance, because when I did Fashion in Motions, I did a very small display, and we had a wooden turntable and it was going round, and we were just standing there admiring it, and somebody came up and just made a sort of funny comment, and I thought, oh no, he's going to be really offended. Yeah. But in fact, he just laughed and said it was fine, and she reminded him of his mum. So it was so gracious. It was really interesting.
And it must be, I guess, very inspiring, but odd in some ways to see his work now and look at it as a whole, because obviously working with him sort of specifically when he was still designing and still very much sort of in the process of developing his aesthetic, do you see his ideas differently now when you're revisiting the whole body of work to when you were sort of working with him on those specific projects?
Oh, absolutely. When I was working with him, one was only conscious of the moment of that particular collection or what was happening then. And even in Radical Fashion, I was so absorbed in the notion of presenting this cameo of the Voss show that I didn't really have a sense of his place in history or a sense of that particular collection being seen in the context of his entire career.
Sure.
But now, with hindsight, and regarding him as part of fashion history, which sadly he is now, but also joyfully is now a very important part of fashion history, I begin to understand his place in time and the wider influences he was drawing on. As I said, film, art, nature, the Gothic, and I've wondered if he was conscious of these inspirations, these other happenings. I wondered whether he knew how complicated his work was at the time, and I think he probably did, but I have never heard him articulate that. And he did say that there could be up to 300 influences in any one collection, which I completely believe. And certainly when we were looking at each collection, it became more and more complicated because we found more and more. And even after the book went to print, we kept finding more and more information and more and more people who'd worked with him. It seemed extraordinary that one person should have the energy and the visionary qualities to create so many beautiful artefacts, but also to make contact with so many other creative people, all of who fed into his collections.
There's so many layers to them.
So many layers.
And that's so special, I think. And so I think that's perhaps going back to what we were saying about why people identify with it, is everyone can find something in every piece, can't they?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely.
And one thing I want to ask about as well is, we talked a little bit at the start about how important it is that it's in London, but I think there's also something very special, as you say, about it being at the V&A, because as you implied, he loved the V&A, didn't he? And he really used to come. Do you know about what his favourite galleries were or anything like that?
Well, yes, I do remember walking through the cast courts with him one time. We were doing the walk that the models would take in the Fashion in Motion, and we got to the cast courts and he just stopped, because they're impressive. Yeah. And what's interesting is the scale is all off. They are casts of architectural details. When I say details, that sounds like something small. They are, tradesman's column, for example. And he just stopped and said, I'd like to be locked in here overnight. He really liked the cast courts, but he also liked the William Morris Room. He liked the arts and crafts movement. Yeah, and he liked our archives and our storerooms, because there would be drawer upon drawer of beautiful things to show him, historical tailoring. Apparently Sarah Burton reminded me that I'd shown them white work, and I'd
Okay.
forgotten about that.
Really?
Yes, so I think he was very interested in the history of fashion, and very interested in the detail, but also the well, it's funny, isn't it? He was completely obsessed with the craft of an object, and we've just seen film of him moving a model's fingers just slightly.
So specific,
so particularly. So he had an enormous amount of energy for realising what he could see. I think he knew what he wanted to create and endeavoured to get all that absolutely right, and that included the craft. But then he also had this panoramic vision, the grand sweeping romantic vision that comes out in the catwalk collections on the stage of the runway. And he used it like a stage. It's kind of form of theatre.
Do you think that interplay between those two things is what makes him such a special designer? Because it seems like his work is full of contradictions. You know, even Savage Beauty, that in itself kind of implies that. Is that what his great... I'm just interested because you were talking about his place in fashion history, and I wonder, because he is so hard to define, isn't he? He's very hard to put in a box and place on a timeline of...
Yes. I think there's a lot of designers who do marvellous catwalk collections, and then you can look at the clothing close up and it's absolutely beautiful. I mean, that's not necessarily unusual, but I think that the spectacular quality of those shows, the immersive quality, the sense of narrative, the personal investment, the biographical details that he embedded in his collections, married with an extraordinary dexterity in tailoring. I mean, seeing him cut in the round, and the speed and the confidence, I mean, it's as if his brain and his hand were just completely connected. And also the way that he inspired others to excel themselves in terms of craft. I've seen the most beautifully rendered pieces, and certainly in our conservation department at the V&A, the team there have just been overwhelmed by the quality of the making of the pieces. You know, for example, the girl who lived in a tree, all that chiffon, the couture techniques, the fur, the embroidery, the attention to detail. It's just exquisite.
And it is special, isn't it, to think that someone could have all those amazing ideas and that vision and such intelligence, but also be in it. It's something Joseph Bennett described to him as yesterday, be a maker, someone who made things, you know, and so beautifully. And
physically had a dynamic relationship with the clothing. When you see him, when you see film of him cutting, or there's a lovely bit of footage of him trying to get the impala horns into the skin jacket, which is going in the exhibition, and they were attached to wooden blocks which were put inside the jacket, and you see him sort of wrestling with them. I think it's with Simon Costin, and it's really a lovely bit of footage because he's actually having a battle and turning around and talking to himself, and it's very dynamic. It's an active form of making.
And tell me, you must be just so excited now, because I guess the next step of the exhibition is watching people react to the clothes. You must be very excited for that.
Well, I've seen quite a few people react already, and everybody in V&A, and I think I've left a team of about 50 working away. Everybody from every department, whatever their involvement, lighting, object handlers, conservation staff, curators, project managers, everybody is so excited, but so respectful. You know, this is somebody's lifetime's achievement. It's 20 intense years of believing in the potential of fashion to transcend the ordinary, to become something that borders on installation art, that's emotional, that's considered, that's spontaneous, that's dramatic, that's quiet. I mean, all these tensions abound in his work. And the very least we can do is to make this the most wonderful exhibition ever.
Well, I'm sure it will be. It is already. Thank you so much,
Thank you so
Claire.
much.